The 12 Chairs by Ilf and Petrov, Chapter 21, Punishment. The auction was due to begin at 5 o'clock. Citizens were allowed to inspect the lots at 4. The friends had arrived at 3 o'clock and spent a whole hour looking at a machine-building exhibition next door.
"It looks as though by tomorrow," said Ostap, "given goodwill on both sides, we ought to be able to buy that little locomotive. A pity there's no price tag on it. It's nice to own your own locomotive."
Ippolit Matveyevich was in a highly nervous state. The chairs alone could console him. He did not leave them until the moment the auctioneer, in check trousers and a beard reaching to his Russian covert coat tunic, mounted the stand. The concessionaires took their places in the 4th row on the right. Ippolit Matveyevich began to get very excited. He thought the chairs would be sold at once, but they were actually the 3rd item on the list, and first came the usual auction junk. Odd pieces of dinner service embellished with coats of arms, a sauce dish, a silver glass holder, a Petunin landscape, a bead handbag, a brand new Primus burner, a small bust of Napoleon, linen braziers, a tapestry, hunters shooting wild duck, and other trash. They had to be patient and wait. It was hard to wait when the chairs were all there. Their goal was within reach.
"What a rumpus there'd be," thought Ostap, "if they knew what little goodies were being sold here today in the form of those chairs."
"A figure depicting justice," announced the auctioneer. "Made of bronze, in perfect condition, 5 rubles. Who'll bid more? 6.5 on the right, 7 at the end, 8 rubles in the front of the first row, going for 8 rubles. Gone to the first row in front." A girl with a receipt book immediately hurried over to the citizen in the 1st row. The auctioneer's hammer rose and fell. He sold an ashtray, some crystal glass, and a porcelain powder bowl. Time dragged painfully. "A bronze bust of Alexander the Third would make a good paperweight, not used for anything else. Going at the marked price, 1 bust of Alexander the Third." There was laughter among the audience.
"Buy it, Marshal," said Ostap sarcastically. "You like that sort of thing."
Ippolit Matveyevich made no reply. He could not take his eyes off the chairs. "No offers? The bust of Alexander the Third is removed from sale. A figure depicting justice, apparently the twin of the one just sold. Basil, hold up the justice, 5 rubles, who'll give me more?" There was a snuffling sound from the 1st row. The citizen evidently wanted a complete set of justices. 5 rubles for the bronze justice." 6, sang out the citizen. 6 rubles in front, 7, 9 rubles on the right at the end. 9.5, said the lover of justice quietly, raising his hand. 9.5 in front, going for 9.5, gone. The hammer came down, and the girl hastened over to the citizen in the 1st row. He paid up and wandered off into the next room to receive his bronze. 10 chairs from a palace, said the auctioneer suddenly. "Why from a palace?" gasped Ippolit Matveyevich quietly. Ostap became angry.
"To hell with you, listen and stop fooling."
10 chairs from a palace, walnut, period of Alexander II, in perfect condition, made by the cabinet maker Hams. Basil, hold one of the chairs under the light." Basil seized the chair so roughly that Ippolit Matveyevich half stood up.
"Sit down, you damned idiot," hissed Ostap. "Sit down, I tell you make me sick."
Ippolit Matveyevich's jaw had dropped. Ostap was pointing like a setter. His eyes shone. 10 walnut chairs, 80 rubles. There was a stir in the room. Something of use in the house was being sold. One after another, the hands flew up. Ostap remained calm. "Why don't you bid?" snapped Vorobyaninov.
"Get out,"
retorted Ostap, clenching his teeth. 120 rubles at the back, 125 in the next seat, 140. Ostap calmly turned his back on the stand and surveyed his competitors. The auction was at its height. Every seat was taken. The lady sitting directly behind Ostap was tempted by the chairs, and after a few words with her husband, "Beautiful chairs, heavenly workmanship, Sonia, and from a palace," put up her hand. 145, 5th row on the right, going. The stir died down. Too expensive. 145, going for the 2nd time. Ostap was nonchalantly examining the stucco cornice. Ippolit Matveyevich was sitting with his head down, trembling. 145, gone. But before the shiny black hammer could strike the plyboard stand, Ostap had turned around, thrown up his hand, and called out quite quietly, 200. All the heads turned towards the concessionaires. Peaked caps, clothed caps, yachting caps, and hats were set in action. The auctioneer raised his bored face and looked at Ostap. 200, he said. 200 in the 4th row on the right. Any more bids? 200 rubles for a palace suite of walnut furniture consisting of 10 pieces, going at 200 rubles to the 4th row on the right. Going. The hand with the hammer was poised above the stand. "Mama," said Ippolit Matveyevich loudly. Ostap, pink and calm, smiled. The hammer came down, making a heavenly sound. "Gone," said the auctioneer. "Young lady, fourth row on the right."
"Well, Chairman, was that effective?" asked Ostap. "What would you do without a technical advisor, I'd like to know?"
Ippolit Matveyevich grunted happily. The young lady trotted over to them. "Was it you who bought the chairs?" "Yes, us," Ippolit Matveyevich burst out. Us. When can we have them?" "Whenever you please, now if you like." The tune "Roaming, You're Always Roaming" went madly round and round in Ippolit Matveyevich's head. "The chairs are ours, ours." His whole body was shouting it. "Ours," cried his liver. "Ours," endorsed his appendix. He was so overjoyed that he suddenly felt twitches in the most unexpected places. Everything vibrated, rocked, and cracked under the pressure of unheard-of bliss. He saw the train approaching the St. Gotthard. On the open platform of the last car stood Ippolit Matveyevich in white trousers, smoking a cigar. Edelweiss fell gently onto his head, which was again covered with shining aluminum gray hair. He was on his way to the Garden of Eden.
"Why 230 and not 200?
said a voice next to him. It was Ostap speaking. He was fiddling with the receipt. 15% commission is included, answered the girl.
"Well, I suppose that's all right. Here you are."
Ostap took out his wallet, counted out 200 rubles, and turned to the director-in-chief of the enterprise.
"Let me have 30 rubles, pal, and make it snappy. Can't you see the young ladies waiting?"
Ippolit Matveyevich made no attempt at all to get the money.
"Well, why are you staring at me like a soldier at a louse? Are you crazy with joy or something?"
"I don't have the money," stammered Ippolit Matveyevich at length.
"Who doesn't?"
asked Ostap very quietly. "I don't."
"And the 200 rubles?"
I lost it." Ostap looked at Vorobianinov and quickly grasped the meaning of the flabbiness of his face, the green pallor of the cheeks, and the bags under the swollen eyes.
"Give me the money," he whispered with loathing, "you old bastard."
"Well, are you going to pay?" asked the girl.
"One moment," said Ostap with a charming smile. "There's been a slight hitch."
There was still a faint hope that they might persuade her to wait for the money. Here Ippolit Matveyevich, who had now recovered his senses, broke into the conversation. "Just a moment," he spluttered. "Why is there commission? We don't know anything about that. You should have warned us. I refuse to pay the 30 rubles. "Very well," said the girl curtly. "I'll see to that." Taking the receipt, she hurried back to the auctioneer and had a few words with him. The auctioneer immediately stood up. His beard glistened in the strong light of the electric lamps. "In accordance with auctioneering regulations," he stated, "persons refusing to pay the full sum of money for items purchased must leave the hall. The sale of the chairs is revoked." The dazed friends sat motionless. The effect was terrific. There was rude guffawing from the onlookers. Ostap remained seated, however. He had not suffered such a blow for a long time. "You're asked to leave." The auctioneer's sing-song voice was firm. The laughter in the room grew louder. So they left. Few people have ever left an auction room with more bitterness. Vorobianinov went first. With his bony shoulders hunched up and in his shrunken jacket and silly baronial boots, he walked like a crane. He felt the warm and friendly glance of the smooth operator behind. The concessionaire stopped in the room next to the auction hall. They could now only watch the proceedings through a glass door. The path back was barred. Ostap maintained a friendly silence. "An outrageous system," murmured Ippolit Matveyevich timidly. "Downright disgraceful. We should complain to the militia." Ostap said nothing. "No, but really, it's the hell of a thing," Ippolit Matveyevich continued ranting, "making the working people pay through the nose. Honestly, 230 rubles for 10 old chairs, it's mad."
"Yes," said Ostap woodenly.
"Isn't it?" said Vorobianinov again. "It's mad."
"Yes."
Ostap went up close to Vorobianinov and, having looked around, hit the marshal a quick, hard, and unobserved blow in the side.
"That's for the militia. That's for the high price of chairs for working people of all countries. That's for going after girls at night. That's for being a dirty old man."
Ippolit Matveyevich took his punishment without a sound. From the side, it looked as though a respectful son was conversing with his father, except that the father was shaking his head a little too vigorously.
"Now get out of here!"
Ostap turned his back on the director of the enterprise and began watching the auction hall. A moment later, he looked around. Ippolit Matveyevich was still standing there with his hands by his sides.
"Oh, you're still here, life and soul of the party. Go on, get out."
"Comrade Bender," Vorobianinov implored. "Comrade Bender."
"Go on, go, and don't come back to Ivanopolos because I'll throw you out."
Ostap did not turn around again. Something was going on in the hall which interested him so much that he opened the glass door slightly and began listening.
"That's done it," he muttered.
"What has?" asked Vorobyaninov obsequiously.
"They're selling the chairs separately, that's what. Maybe you'd like to buy one. Go ahead, I'm not stopping you. I doubt, though, whether they'll let you in, and you haven't much money, I gather."
In the meantime, in the auction hall, the auctioneer, feeling that he would be unable to make any member of the public cough up 200 rubles all at once, too large a sum for the small fry left, decided to obtain his price in bits and pieces. The chairs came up for auction again, but this time in lots. "4 chairs from a palace, made of walnut, upholstered, made by hams, 30 rubles. Who'll give me more?" Ostap had soon regained his former power of decision and sang-froid.
"You stay here, you lady's favorite, and don't go away. I'll be back in 5 minutes. You stay here and see who buys the chairs. Don't miss a single one."
Ostap had thought of a plan, the only one possible under the difficult circumstances facing them. He hurried out into the Petrovka, made for the nearest asphalt vat, and had a businesslike conversation with some waifs. 5 minutes later, he was back as promised, with the waifs waiting ready at the entrance to the auction rooms. "They're being sold," whispered Ippolit Matveyevich. "4 and then 2 have already gone."
"See what you've done," said Ostap. "Admire your handiwork. We had them in our hands, don't you realize?"
From the hall came a squeaky voice of the kind endowed only to auctioneers, croupiers, and glaziers. "And I have on my left 3, 1 more chair from the palace, walnut, in perfect condition, and I have on the right, going for 3.5 in front." 3 chairs were sold separately. The auctioneer announced the sale of the last chair. Ostap choked with fury. He let fly at Vorobyaninov again. His abusive remarks were full of bitterness. Who knows how far Ostap might not have gone in this satirical exercise had he not been interrupted by the approach of a man in a brown lod suit. The man waved his plump hands, bowed, and jumped up and down and backwards and forwards as though playing tennis. "Tell me, is there really an auction here?" he asked Ostap hurriedly. "Yes, an auction, and are they really selling things here? Wonderful." The stranger jumped backwards, his face wreathed with smiles. "So they're really selling things here, and one can buy cheaply, first rate, very, very much so. Ah!" Swinging his hips, the stranger rushed past the bewildered concessionaires into the hall and bought the last chair so quickly that Vorobyaninov could only croak. With the receipt in his hand, the stranger ran up to the collection counter. "Tell me, do I get the chair now? Wonderful! Ah! Bleating endlessly and skipping about the whole time, the stranger loaded the chair onto a cab and drove off. A waif ran behind, hot on his trail. The new chair owners gradually dispersed by cab and on foot. Ostap's junior agents haired after them. Ostap himself left, and Vorobyaninov timidly followed him. The day had been like a nightmare. Everything had happened so quickly and not at all as anticipated. On Sitsev Vrajek, pianos, mandolins, and accordions were celebrating the spring. Windows were wide open. Flower pots lined the windowsills. Displaying his hairy chest, a fat man stood by a window in his braces and sang. A cat slowly made its way along a wall. Kerosene lamps blazed above the food stalls. Nicky was strolling about outside the little pink house. Seeing Ostap, who was walking in front, he greeted him politely and then went up to Vorobyaninov. Ippolit Matveyevich greeted him cordially. Nicky, however, was not going to waste time. "Good evening," he said, and unable to control himself, boxed Ippolit Matveyevich's ears. As he did so, he uttered a phrase which, in the opinion of Ostap, who was witnessing the scene, was a rather vulgar one. "That's what everyone will get," said Nicky in a childish voice. "Who tries?" Who tries exactly what, Nicky did not specify. He stood on tiptoe and, closing his eyes, slapped Vorobyaninov's face. Ippolit Matveyevich raised his elbow slightly, but did not dare utter a sound.
"That's right," said Ostap. "And now on the neck, twice, that's it, can't be helped. Sometimes the eggs have to teach a lesson to a chicken who gets out of hand. Once more, that's it, don't be shy. Don't hit him any more on the head, it's his weakest point."
If the Stargorod conspirators had seen the mastermind and father of Russian democracy at that crucial moment, it can be taken for certain that the secret alliance of the sword and plowshare would have ended its existence. "That's enough, I think," said Nicky, hiding his hand in his pocket.
"Just once more," implored Ostap. "To hell with him, he'll know next time."
Nicky went away. Ostap went upstairs to Ivanopulos and looked down. Ippolit Matveyevich stood sideways to the house, leaning against the iron railing of the embassy. "Citizen Michelson," he called. "Konrad Karlovich, come inside, I permit you." Ippolit Matveyevich entered the room in slightly better spirits. "Unheard of impudence!" he exclaimed angrily. "I could hardly control myself."
"Dear, dear," sympathized Ostap. "What has the modern youth come to? Terrible young people, chase after other people's wives, spend other people's money, complete decadence. But tell me, does it really hurt when they hit you on the head?"
I'll challenge him to a duel.
Fine, I can recommend a good friend of mine. He knows the dueling code by heart and has 2 brooms quite suitable for a struggle to the death. You can have Ivanopoulos and his neighbor on the right as seconds. He's an ex-honorary citizen of the city of Colgreave and still even brags about the title. Or you can have a duel with mincing machines. It's more elegant. Each wound is definitely fatal. The wounded adversary is automatically turned into a meatball. How do you like the idea, Marshal?
At that moment there was a whistle from the street, and Ostap went down to receive the reports from his young agents. The waifs had coped splendidly with their mission. 4 chairs had gone to the Columbus Theater. The waif explained in detail how the chairs were transported in a wheelbarrow, unloaded and carted into the building through the stage door. Ostap already knew the location of the theater. Another young Pathfinder said that 2 chairs had been taken away in a taxi. The boy did not seem to be very bright. He knew the street where the chairs had been taken and even remembered the number of the apartment was 17, but could not remember the number of the house. "I am too quick," said the waif. "It flew at me head."
You won't get any money,
declared the boss. "But mister, I'll show you the place."
All right, stay here. We'll go there together.
The citizen with the bleat turned out to live on Sadovaya Spasskaya. Ostap jotted down the exact address in a notebook. The 8th chair had been taken to the House of the Peoples. The boy who had followed this chair proved to have initiative. Overcoming barriers in the form of the commandant's office and numerous messengers, he had found his way into the building and discovered the chair had been brought to the editor of the Lathe newspaper. 2 boys had not yet come back. They arrived almost simultaneously, panting and tired. Barrack Street in the Clear Lakes district.
Number?
9, and the apartment is 9. There were toddlers living in the yard next door. I carried the chair the last part of the way. We went on foot. The final messenger brought sad tidings. At first everything had been all right, but then everything had gone all wrong. The purchaser had taken his chair into the goods yard of October Station, and it had not been possible to slip in after him, as there were armed guards from the Ministry of Transport standing at the gates. "He left by train, most likely," said the waif, concluding his report. This greatly disconcerted Ostap. Rewarding the waifs royally, 1 ruble each, except for the herald from Varsanofevsky Street who had forgotten the number and was told to come back the next day, the technical advisor went back inside and, ignoring the many questions put to him by the disgraced chairman of the board, began to scheme.
Nothing's lost yet. We have the addresses, and there are many old and reliable tricks for getting the chairs. Simple friendship, a love affair, friendship plus housebreaking, barter, and money. The last is the most reliable, but we haven't much money.
Ostap glanced ironically at Ippolit Matveyevich. The smooth operator had regained his usual clarity of thought and mental balance. It would, of course, be possible to get the money. Their reserve included the picture Chamberlain Answers the Bolsheviks, the tea strainer, and full opportunity for continuing a career of polygamy. The only trouble was the 10th chair. There was a trail to follow, but only a diffuse and vague one.
Well, anyway,
Ostap decided aloud,
we can easily bet on those odds. I'll stake 9 to 1. The hearing is continued, do you hear? Hey, you, member of the jury.